Welcome to the Grief and Belief podcast, where we share stories of hope. Thank you for joining us. We hope this powerful story will help you feel God's love for you today.
Welcome to another episode of the Grief and Belief podcast. I'm David Mickelson.
And I'm Corey Andrews.
And today we're really excited to introduce our guest, who's Jenedy Paige.
Hey guys, thanks for having me.
Yeah,
some of you may know Jenedy. She's a well-known artist, and she's does a lot of social media content, and she's just a source of light and brightness and hope. And so we're grateful for her willingness to jump on. And what might be especially interesting about this episode is if you're listening on Spotify or Apple or some other one, you might want to move over to YouTube because Jenedy will be painting while we do this episode, while we do this interview.
Although I will say, you're not actually going to be seeing what I'm actually working on because camera angles. So take those expectations of watching a masterpiece unfold. And yeah, but you will be able to see some of my other art behind me. So that's good.
Yep.
Well, we know you're busy, and so just so grateful for the opportunity to watch you work, but also have a conversation. So thanks for taking the time to be with us today.
Of course.
Jenedy, what would you like to share with our audience about you? Help us get to know you and your history, and maybe a little bit about your family.
Okay. Well, I've been painting for about 2 decades. I actually didn't come to art with a lot of natural ability. It's a skill that I've just kind of developed over time and learned a lot at BYU, Idaho. I'm very, very proud of graduating from the art department at BYU, Idaho. And I've been married for 20 years. We've had 4 kids. My living children are now 15, 13, and 11. And so we are just about square right in the middle of the teen years, which is awesome. I absolutely love watching my kids grow up. And I also do American Ninja Warrior, which is a weird tangent in my life that actually only came about because of a prompting I felt one day that God asked me to do it. And I did it. And now it's been 6 years, and it's improved my life in a lot of ways, and given me a larger platform to share my story, for which I'm grateful. So that's me in a little bit of summary.
That's awesome. Were you already kind of gifted athletically, or was this really out of the blue, kind of out of the blue?
No, in fact, if you said gifted athletically, my mom would probably laugh at you because I was kind of like the opposite of gifted athletically. I just remember playing basketball with my family as a kid, and I would like jump and then shoot, but coordinating the jump and the shooting was really challenging for me. So they would laugh at me all the time. And so I didn't play any sports growing up. I was on a competitive jump rope team for like a year in like 5th grade, but and then I did half a season of cross country, but quit halfway through because I didn't like the vomiting at the end of races. I was like, this isn't fun. So yeah, I literally did not have a lot of coordination or skill or ability. So it actually astounds me all the time that I'm even like considered an athlete now, because I was like the music nerd growing up. So.
Well, and I don't know that you always put artists and athletes in the same group. And I think some some athletes are probably really good artists, but it does feel like, 2 different circles of people, and probably nowhere do you need coordination and strength and everything more than doing a Ninja Warrior course, right? It kind of requires everything.
So crazy. It's a total body workout for sure. If anybody wants like a total body workout, absolutely recommend going to a ninja gym.
Yeah.
Awesome. Tell us a little bit about more about your family. How did you meet your husband?
Oh yeah, in the library. Yep.
Nice.
At BYU, Idaho, I was matting a watercolor assignment, and my husband was a horticulture major. And so he was putting together a fall leaf collection book. I was like, a fall leaf collection book? Are you in kindergarten? No, apparently when you're a horticulture major, you still make leaf books. So that's where we met, and our courtship is way too complicated and long to share with you right now. But
Yeah.
lot of angels, I think, intervening to make it happen. But I will say that when I married my husband, I felt like I didn't really know him. That sounds really weird, but like really, like, you see all those signs or things that say like, today I'm marrying my best friend. And like I couldn't say that because I didn't know him that well, but I had had some really powerful experiences through the spirit that led me to believe that he was a good match for me and it was a good idea. And so it kind of felt like this leap of faith, to be honest. And then I feel like our whole entire marriage, it's been like he's this treasure chest that I keep pulling gems out of, like I keep rediscovering him, and I realize more and more all the time that like God was right when he told me, hey, this guy's a good idea. Because when you get married, you have no idea what's ahead of you. You have no idea that you guys might lose a kid, and you don't know how either of you are going to handle that. And so I feel like if you've known them for 15 years or if you've only known them for 15 months, at the end of the day, like marriage is always this leap of faith. And so I'm grateful all the time that God led me to marry this man I didn't know that well, because God knew him super well, and he knew that he was actually like an incredible match for me. So
I'm kind of
yeah.
getting the sense that you've maybe had a closeness to Heavenly Father, or closeness to the Spirit, like been able to capture spiritual promptings throughout your life, or maybe that's a skill that's been developed over time. But how would you describe maybe your relationship with the Spirit and, hearing God's voice in your life?
Yeah, so I totally believe it's a skill. I mean, I think like anything, there are people that are naturally gifted towards spirituality, but for a lot of us, it's something that we have to actually practice. And so for me, I was 10, almost 11, when my mom showed me a, a pattern, a daily devotional that I could do that would help me to develop the skill of being able to hear him and being able to have a relationship with God. And she just challenged me. It was really simple. She just challenged me every day to write in a journal and read scripture and to pray. Which, I feel like growing up in a religious family and growing up going to church, I feel like we talk about scripture study and prayer a lot. But I feel like writing is kind of like, kind of swept under the rug. Like maybe we pull it out once a year and dust it off and say, yeah, keeping a journal would be a good idea. But it's not like really integrated into like a spiritual practice for most people. But being introduced to this idea of prayer, journal, and scriptures as a 10-year-old girl, it's literally shaped my life and made me who I am. And I think that the writing is so important because, well, I'll just tell you, when I first started, I was the typical, 10-year-old girl. And so I wrote about jumping on the trampoline and like hanging out with my friends and when my brothers made me mad. And then I would just read some verses of scripture, and usually it was like, open the book and whichever one you land on, that's going to be the inspiration for you that day. And then I would just say kind of like the same prayer. But then what happened with the writing is that over time I found problems in my life. And when you have problems, all of a sudden this whole pattern changes, because it's not just, yeah, and then I had a great day, and then you say a prayer and let's not get sick and we'll catch you tomorrow, and then read a little verse, and everything's like, I guess kind of surface level. But then when you have a problem and you're writing about it and your heart is breaking, well, then when you pray, your prayer is different because you have a problem and you have something you need actual help with. And then when you read scripture, you're actually looking for help for that problem instead of a random verse. And so just starting as a little girl, and then, now I'm 30 years into this practice. It's been amazing. I actually have like a whole wall here. We'll field trip. Field trip. Okay.
All
I
right.
have
Let's
I have
go.
like a whole wall of journals here in my studio. We're gonna have to. They're kind of stuck behind this sparrow painting. But see all
We,
these? This
yeah.
it's literally like this whole wall, and each one becomes like another testament of Jesus Christ. Because what happened is, you have a problem, and then you write about it, and then you find a solution or an answer or comfort. Sometimes you don't get a solution. Sometimes you just get comfort. Sometimes you just get God like patting you on the back, telling you it's going to be okay. But in any case, it was so beautiful to see like problem, solution, question, answer, and you go, oh my gosh, God exists and He's aware of me, because I have like proof. I mean, even as a junior high student, I was very nerdy, and I loved getting good grades, and I loved the scientific method. And as I was like doing this devotional practice, I could see like the scientific method. It's like I literally am experimenting. Does God hear me? Can I get solutions to my problems through the scriptures? And then you have the proof like right here. So that's honestly, I'm like the biggest advocate for journaling. And I just think we just need that time to elevate our perspective from what's happening right now to what happened yesterday, and what do I want tomorrow, and what are your big questions you have for the Lord, like what don't you understand, and this kind of, it's like a meditation, and yeah, it's really pivotal for me in creating a relationship with God.
That's so cool. I was just thinking while you were sharing that of a friend of mine who, after President Nelson gave his first talk as the prophet, he at one point in that talk he said, "Listen," and as he was kind of describing the pattern of revelation, and he really emphasized "listen," and it stood out to my buddy so much so that he would, whenever he'd kneel down to pray, he'd start a timer. And he'd time it for, I prayed for 2 minutes. He'd stop his timer at the end of his prayer, and then he'd open up a journal, and he'd set a timer for as long as he had prayed. He would set a timer and he would journal for that long, thinking like, if I'm really wanting to listen, if I'm really wanting to communicate with heaven, I want to allow Him to talk to me, and
Right.
if I have a relationship with somebody, I'm not just going to call them up, tell them everything I want, and then hang up the phone. No, I'm going to, if I care about them, at least I'm going to listen. And he would do that through journaling. And I think, because you're doing what you're doing, and that was in your art room, I think that maybe that is an artistic way. You start with a blank page and you fill it up with what God is teaching you, and there's just a cool art within that. So thanks for sharing that.
Of course. Yeah.
Well, Jenedy, tell us a little bit about Victory Morgan. We're here to talk a little bit about him and your experience with Victory Morgan. And so could you just tell us about him a little bit?
Yeah, sure. So I was actually terrified to become a parent, both me and my husband. It was like this massive leap of faith for both of us. I think in part because we were living in Southern California and it was just super expensive. But also just, I was a nanny. If anybody's been a nanny, you understand how that shifts your perspective on parenthood. Everybody's like, oh no, it's way different when it's your kids. And it is, but you don't know that until you have kids. And so it took a lot of prayer for us to choose to even start down that path. And it was really interesting because I thought I was going to get pregnant really easy because my mom did. And I think just with girls in general, we kind of just like, whatever happened to our moms, that's what's going to happen to us, And so I thought, yeah, we're going to take this leap into the darkness, and I'm just going to magically get pregnant, and then we'll begin this journey. And then nothing happened. And then nothing happened. And it was really interesting because God took almost a year to take us from, okay, I guess we'll do this. We'll be faithful and take this leap of faith, to, no, please let us be parents, And And eventually we did. And our son's name was Victory Morgan. We named him after my husband, whose name is Victor, but we called him Morgan, which is his middle name. And he was actually born in Southern California at a time where we lived in a garden. Because my husband was a horticulture major, he was a landscape designer. He worked for this company that had like a 15-acre nursery, and it had this house from like the 30s on it. And we got permission from his boss to live in this tiny little house. And it's like so fascinating for me that he was born in a garden, because that really kind of illustrates my life up to that point. Like, I grew up in a happy home with awesome parents and awesome siblings, and life was beautiful. And to be honest, I was like a little saccharine. Like, I watched some videos of myself during that time. I would make these videos for my grandma because she loved plants and flowers, and I'd be walking my little baby through the garden, and I would tell my grandma, here's the rhododendrons, and look at the lilacs today, and the hibiscus, and isn't it beautiful, and the world is beautiful, and life is beautiful. I was like a Disney princess, you know?
Yeah.
And it's like so fascinating to me, because while I started life in a garden, later I would have to come to know pain, you know? And to think, if I had just stayed there in that garden forever, how shallow I would be, how little use I would be to the world, because my perspective at that time in my life was like, and if you have a problem, you can pray and you'll get what you want. And every time I pray, I get what I want. It's so great. You just, if you have a problem, pray, you'll get what you want. You'll get your answers. God is good. Life is beautiful, rainbow and sunshine. And it was great. And then 2 years later, I had another son, and his name is True. And then I'm, as a mom, like trying to balance the demands of having two little ones. And then my husband decided to go to grad school, and he went to school in Arizona, and we moved in with my parents so that we could afford grad school. And we moved to Tucson, just like the lone and dreary world. Okay, so I went from the Garden of Eden to Tucson. And my mom was so nervous when we moved in, because she had a pool and a pond on an acre. And I was like, oh, Mom, it's okay. You've got alarms on the doors, and we've got all these, a fence around the pool. Everything's going to be fine. And it was for like a year. And then one day, just, I've come to learn that you can have all the precautions that you want, but at the end of the day, you've got a massive body of water in your backyard, and sometimes accidents happen. We weren't even like swimming, But yeah, one day my 3-year-old Victory Morgan fell in the pool, and this is where I come to know pain. And he was resuscitated and life-flighted to the hospital. And I just remember it feeling so surreal. And I'm pretty sure every parent you've been through loss has a moment where they're like, this isn't actually happening, is it? Like, it's just too terrible. This can't actually be real. And driving, because they didn't let me even go in the helicopter. And so just driving to the hospital and just wondering like what you're going to find when you get there is just terrible. And then we were there for 7 weeks, and I thought after 3 weeks for sure he was coming home. I mean, the doctors told me like, oh yeah, like, I mean, he's not really on any life support of any kind. Like, let's talk what long-term care is going to look like. It's going to be a bit bumpy road because of the hypoxia, the lack of oxygen to his brain. But then after 7 weeks, he ended up passing away. And I was devastated. I mean, any parent would be, but like, I had been spending 7 weeks in the hospital writing in my journal and reading my scriptures and praying and reminding God of all of the times that he performed a miracle for somebody, from the widow of Nain to Jerry's daughter, like it was kind of like, I was trying to come to this understanding with God, like, you and I both know what you're capable of here. And I'm bringing you all my faith. And so all you have to do is work your power to heal that I know that you have. And then we go home and then you get what you want.
Back in the garden again.
Yeah.
Back in the garden, right? And that's the thing, is he never intended for me to go back to the garden. And I remember being in the hospital praying so bad for like the rewind button. I mean, as a child of, like, I was born in the mid 80s, and you could just rewind, be kind, rewind. That's what I wanted. We were just going to hit the rewind button. We were going to go back a couple weeks. I would be back in the throes of potty training and preschool, and that's what we were going to do. And I've learned since that God never intends for us to go back. His plan is for us to go forward. And anyways, so there was a lot of, I think I described that time in my life as severely disappointed, because I knew, listen, I couldn't walk away from God. I couldn't just be like, peace, I don't want anything to do with you, because I knew too much. I had all that proof, I had all that evidence that he heard me and answered my prayers. I knew he answered my prayers. He just didn't answer this one the way that I wanted. And so then that I had to work through that. And I feel like, we talk about having this relationship, developing a relationship with God. Well, I think any well-meaning relationship has points of pain, because whether it's your spouse or your mom or your kids, if there's love and there's an imperfect being in the relationship, there will be points of pain. And while God is perfect, I am not. And I feel that God, when we feel disappointed, when we're mad, I think he would rather show up mad and disappointed than A, not show up at all, or B, some kind of fake shallow thing, He just wants our hearts. He wants our real and our honest hearts. And so for me, like, after my son passed away, this relationship that I had been working on for, at this point, 15 years, really shifted. And my prayers would just be like, well, I'm still mad. I'm still disappointed. I still wish he was here. I still don't understand why you didn't give me what I want. But I'm here. And I'm hoping that you're going to be able to fix me. I mean, you didn't fix my son, but I know that you can also fix me. And then, it's just so beautiful, because it's like, if you just keep showing up, even in the pain points of the relationship, God is so good that eventually you start to know beauty again, and you appreciate beauty in a whole other way. I know I'm like monologuing like super hard right now, but I kind of want to tell you one more thing. And this is something that's really become apparent only in the past couple years. And I'm like well into this. My son passed away 14 years ago. So I was preparing a presentation on joy. And I was like looking in the scriptures, all these references to joy, and I kept seeing the word filled with joy, full or filled, overflowing. For some reason, joy is always connected to this idea of being full or filled. And then God asked me this question, Jenedy, how do you fill something? And I thought, and I was like, oh, well, I mean, first it has to be like empty. There has to be like a cavity. There has to be like something that you can fill. And then I got this idea of like a log. Like imagine you have got a big log like falling down in the forest and you're going to pour some water on it. Like what's going to happen? It's just going to like roll off the sides. Or if you have a plate, if you had a plate and you're going to fill it with water, you go like this and pretty soon it would just run off the sides, right? And but if you get out some carving tools with that wood, with that log, you could eventually carve it into a canoe or a bowl, or something that could contain water, right? And I realized, like we talk about Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden and how they had no capacity for joy. Well, that's something that I've always wondered, like, why not? I mean, they were in the garden. It was a beautiful place. Why couldn't they have joy? And I realized it's because they were shallow. And I realized that I was just like that plate or that log when I was living in the garden. And then what happened with sorrow is that sorrow carved me out and it made me hollow. And I now had a capacity. And I feel like when we are carved out, we have these harrowing experiences. Sometimes we try to fill them with all kinds of things. Like our success in our job, or some people turn to substances or an addiction or whatever. But nothing can fill that cavity except for Jesus Christ. And if we turn to him, he will fill it with joy. And so it's been a road and it's been a journey, but my cavity, my hole, the Grand Canyon is what I called it in my journal after my son passed away. It has now been filled with the atonement of Jesus Christ and with joy. And it's like my capacity now to feel joy, to know beauty, to appreciate the garden is so much greater because of the pain and the sorrow that I've passed through. And you'll see this pattern in the scriptures. As great as was my suffering, even so is my joy, right? And because Jesus Christ endured the greatest suffering and the greatest sorrow, he therefore has the greatest capacity of all of us for not only joy, but understanding and empathy and power to help us through our own carving experiences.
And then once our cup overflows, right, then we can pour into others, and
That's right.
And art, I think, is a way that you've probably been able to do that and pour into blessing lives and giving hope. And so thank you. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. I'm wondering, I'm thinking of maybe individuals out there who are listening to this podcast and kind of in that freshness of grief, feeling so empty. They're in their Grand Canyon and it's so empty that all they hear is echoes, as they cry out for help. What would you say, as far as how to be filled again to someone who's maybe in that moment?
That's a good question. And I do know the caverns. So after my son passed away, everything was different. And it's like I used to run casually before. And then after he passed away, my running was like for survival. It was like gritty and it was mad and it was sad and I would cry while I'm running. And then my painting the same, right? I used to paint just, happy little clouds. And then after my son passed away, now I'm painting for survival. And I'm painting like, and I guess I'm using these two examples of like a physical activity and a creative activity. They were essentially outlets for suffering, right? Like I realized I had so much inside me, so much hurt, and I had to put it somewhere because I couldn't contain it forever. It would destroy me, right? And so I was so grateful because yes, I could give it to the Lord in prayer, one little stone at a time, but then I also could pour it into a painting, and I would just take black paint sometimes and just like let it fall, just like let it drip. and I would cry. Oh my gosh, I think I cried, like ugly cried, like every morning for at least a year, you know? And then I had music and running and service. And it's like one thing that I kind of counsel people to do that are in the midst of the hard and the cavernous and the emptiness is to find something that you can put all that emotion into, whether it is running or writing a song or playing the guitar, or I mean, there's a million outlets, but I feel like every time I was able to express myself in any of those ways, it just kind of like helped relieve the grief, like just a little bit, you know. So, so yeah, find something that you love that you can pour that grief into.
And my experience has been grief has made it hard for me to want to do anything. I want to come home, shut the garage door, and draw the blinds and jump under the covers and watch a TV show. But I also have this like balancing, I just call it grief energy. I don't really know what to call it, but it's like I'm feeling all these feelings and they want to go somewhere. So my natural man wants me to just hide, you know, but I think the spirit inside of me says, that's not what you were born to do. Let's do something with it, whatever that could be, a million different things, like you said. But I always feel like this contradiction. I have a good idea. I don't want to do it. I have this project I've started. I feel like I'm never going to finish it. But I think putting that energy somewhere that's positive and hopeful and helpful is such a healing experience. So I love what you've shared, and I've experienced some of that, you know, in my short period of kind of going through a grief experience.
Yeah, and you know, another thing, like my husband, the first thing that he did was he signed up for a boxing class. And the cool thing about signing up for a class is that you made like a financial commitment that I think helps you show up. And for my husband, he was like, I just needed to go beat the crap out of something like a couple times a week. And I felt better after I did. But yeah, like, so if you sign up for something, then it's, I think, a little maybe easier because it's not so self driven. You have like an extrinsic motivation as well. Yeah.
I was just thinking when you said that we just want to hide, that back to the garden, right? And that what Jenedy was teaching us, like that is what the adversary wanted too, right? Like run, hide, don't stand up, don't move, don't act, be agents, you know, and definitely don't come to the healer. Definitely don't come to him who can fix the messes and heal the pain that you're going through. And so yeah, I'm loving that connection to life in the fall, and what we're learning today from you, Jenedy. It's just been so powerful. What other resources have helped you? Any, and this could be like books or music or other things that have just throughout your grief journey have been a support or helped you grow.
Honestly, like connecting with other people. Because guess what? Everywhere around you, there's somebody who's mourning because we don't get out of this alive. And so I found really quickly into my grief journey that that I became like a magnet for other people who had been through loss. I think about when I was actually in the hospital with my son, there was a woman in my neighborhood who had just the year prior lost her son, who was like 21 in like a hang gliding accident. And she was one of the first people to come to the hospital. And she was also somebody that just helped to hold my hand through the grief journey. And that was so helpful and so powerful. And then, you know, that first year, she also counseled me to keep like a gratitude journal. She said that she had done that the year after her son died, and it was so helpful. Like, every night she would just write like 1 to 5 things specifically from that day that she was thankful for. So it wasn't just like, I'm thankful for Jesus and my family. It was like, oh, I'm thankful that my husband came home from work early and I got 30 minutes to go for a run. Or I'm thankful that like a very specific thing. And I did that. I filled 2 journals of just gratitude. And those journals are actually so precious to me now because it's like the really raw time, and it takes effort to find something to be grateful for. But if you put in that effort, then you start to see it like more readily, all these things that God is like really pouring down on you. Because the truth is that God mourns with us. Like he's sad. I mean, I think about Christ crying when Lazarus passes away, and he knows he's going to raise him from the dead in like, 30 seconds, but he still is like, he weeps with those people. I actually did a painting. I can show it to you if you want. You want field trip? Let me grab it.
Excited.
Yeah. Okay, so this painting is called Acquainted with Grief. And I painted it for a family. Actually, believe it or not, it's a family in Nashville, Tennessee. And about 3 years ago, there was this terrible shooting at Covenant Elementary, where I think 8 people lost their lives to a shooter. And I found out that the pastor, he's like the head of this mega church, Covenant Church, lost his daughter in that shooting. And I just thought about like all the kids that were at the school, and yet like the leader of the whole congregation had to lose his daughter, and he had 3 sons and only 1 girl. And I think because I've had 3 sons and a girl, like oh my gosh, I wept for this man. And I couldn't just like pray. Couldn't just be like, oh, I'm going to pray for that family, because it just seemed too big and too heavy. And so I was like, I'm going to paint because that's what I do. And I thought about like how Christ, like he had actually mourned with me. He had grieved with me so many times, so many mornings. And so I did this for that family. And so it's kind of like people will comfort you because they have also lost, but then you'll have opportunities to comfort other people. And all of those connections are like so beautiful and powerful and helping you heal,
Yeah, there's really nothing quite like talking to somebody else who's been in a similar situation as you. Like others can they can comfort, like they can come and try to comfort you, and you love them, and that of course they can help. But it just always felt like it hit a little bit different when it was somebody who said, I also lost a child, or my dad just passed away, or whatever it might be. It just felt like the connection was a lot deeper. And I'm glad that you showed us that painting. One, that's beautiful painting, and there's so much emotion in it. And I wanted to ask if there were any particular pieces of art that you felt drawn to in your grief, like that you had a creative experience, and that's a beautiful one. Maybe that one was more, how do I help someone else? But could you talk maybe a little bit more about your art and how it's been helpful to you in trying to heal through grief?
Yeah, it's field trip.
There's
okay.
Another field trip.
So many field trips today. Okay, so this is probably the easiest way to answer that question. So I wrote this book called Coming Full Circle. And it's called, the subtitle is When God Puts the Pieces Together. And the pieces are the art pieces in this book, but they're also the pieces of me. Okay. And, a lot of people, you guys know, when you lose somebody, a lot of people bring you well-meaning things, and you're grateful for them, because anybody who has the courage to bring you a well-meaning thing, bless them. But sometimes the books or the things that they brought me, I was just like, so your child's with Jesus now. Isn't that great? That's so great. You're like, except this is how I feel. This is so this book has a bunch of my grief paintings in it. And my thoughts associated with it. But this painting is called Close But Separate. And it's a painting of my hand reaching for my son's hand across the veil. And my hand is being held down by a shackle, but the shackle is a watch. Because I realized it was just a matter of time. It was time that separated us, and I knew he was close. Oh my gosh, I have felt my son so many times. I for sure know we live after we die because I've experienced my son as a spirit, okay? So I knew he was close, but we were just so separate. And it's that separation that's painful, right? So I painted Close But Separate. I painted Among Thistle and Thorn. This is like that idea of like we're not in the garden anymore and it hurts. And actually, if you look closely, you can see that paint that I just dripped. That's what like what I was saying. I was simply just drip black paint across it, like because it felt like the paint was like crying with me, like as the tears are falling down my face, and I could just watch the paint fall, and like it was so cathartic. And then this one, she's leaning on a rock. This is called Stone of Help. This was actually inspired by the Old Testament. The children of Israel, during Joshua's time, they erected an Ebenezer, which means stone of help in Hebrew. And in the children of Israel, it was their monument to the Lord's help and helping them through the wilderness. And so I wanted to raise my own Ebenezer. And so this is symbolically the idea of like leaning on the rock through your wilderness experience. And behind her is like the wilderness. And what's funny, when I painted this, at first I painted like a normal Tucson landscape. There was actually like saguaro cactuses and stuff. And then I looked at the painting and I was like, well, that says absolutely nothing about how I actually feel. So then I got sandpaper, and that's so cathartic, dude. If you can like sand a panel, I highly recommend. You're just like, sanding it. And then I turned the panel upside down, then I dripped black paint across it. And then I was like, now we're getting closer. Now we're getting closer to how I feel. And then I just kind of resurrected or brought this girl forth out of like all that destruction. So then, my mom would be like, are we going to paint sad paintings the rest of our lives, Jenedy? Like, is this our new normal? When are you going to paint something happy, Jenedy? And I was like, I don't know, Mom, but this feels really good right now. But eventually, this is called Rising Up, and now there's still tears. You can still see the dripping paint behind her, but she's learning how to pick herself back up and work within the veil. Okay. This one, Let Go, she's holding a dark balloon. This one I painted like 5 years after I lost my son. Okay, so lest any of you guys believe I just like had a year of sorrow and then I was magically better. No, it's so long. It's like the growth of a tree. Okay, and I'm like 5 years into it, and I've now had 2 more children, and all of a sudden I have all this anxiety all the time, like watching my little kids who are now 3 years old running around, and it's like lightning can strike, or a car could hit, and I felt like prior to my loss, I felt like I was immune, right? Like I am the one that nothing bad happens to. Bad things happen to other people. And then having experienced a tragedy, now I felt like I was now susceptible to everything. Anything bad could happen to me. And so I thought, like, how do I deal with this anxiety? Because I can't be the helicopter mom. And so how I deal with things is I paint them. And one day my son walks into my bathroom dragging this black balloon from the dollar store behind him. And as I just saw that image of him with a black balloon, I was like, that's it. That's me. That's how I feel. I'm just holding on for dear life to this black balloon, and I'm just dragging it around with me everywhere that I go. And so I painted it. And then while I'm painting it, I know that I'm going to title it Let Go, because I know that there's still these pieces of grief that I need to let go of. And I looked up the phrase let go in the scriptures. And did you know it only exists twice in the whole canon? And both of it is in the Old Testament. And it has to do with animal sacrifice. So in the first account, there would be 2 goats presented for sacrifice, and one would be killed and the other would be let go. And in the other instance, there were 2 birds that were presented, and one would be killed and the other would be let go. And as I read that, God was just like, Jenedy, like my son has actually covered this. So you can let it go. Okay. How do I let it go? And I feel like the how we let it go is different for so many people, and it's a very individual thing, but it's an intentional thing. Like learning to give the grief over to the Lord, surrendering it, like actually one of my favorite books is The Great Divorce by C.S. Lewis. It's not a very long book. Have either of you guys read it?
No, but I haven't read it, but somebody else brought it up that we interviewed before.
Okay, yeah. So it's so cool because it's actually like an allegory, so to speak. C.S. Lewis says it was based on a dream, but it's basically like Lewis wakes up in hell, and then there's all these ghosts in hell that have the opportunity to go to heaven if they want to, which I love this idea because I really do believe in a God of like eternal progression. And so he gets on the bus, and then these ghosts are up in heaven, and like these spirits from heaven try to come and encourage them to come to heaven. But it's so funny, like because heaven kind of hurts for them because the things in heaven are solid and they are just like a ghost material. And anyways, the whole book is these interactions between angels and ghosts, and it's so beautiful. And in one of them, there's this ghost from hell who's got this lizard on his back, and the lizard like whispers things to him, lies. And this angel sits down next to him on a bench, and he's like, "Hey, I could help you with that." And then the lizard's like, "Don't let him touch me. I'm all you've got. If you let me go, you've got nothing." And so then the ghost is scared. He's like, "Oh, I don't know." And the angel's like, I can't do it unless you give me permission. I can't just take it. You have to let me take it from you. But I'm here. When you're ready, I'm here. And eventually the ghost has the courage to let him take it. He's like, "Take it, just do it." So the angel like grabs the lizard off this ghost's back, and then the lizard writhes and burns in the hand of the angel. And then that lizard is transformed into a stallion, and the ghost rides that stallion into heaven. And I love this so much because I feel like grief for us can be that lizard. I feel like sometimes the adversary says, if you are not sad every day for the rest of your lives, then you have forgotten them and you don't love them anymore. And I feel like Jesus Christ is sitting there next to us being like, I could take that from you. And I need your permission. I can take it if you want. And I feel like for me, like that process of learning to let go is like learning to let him take it and let go of those lies that if I'm not sad, then I don't love him. And the truth is, I have found that when you sacrifice your broken heart and when you hand that grief over to Jesus Christ, you actually have more love for your loved one than you did before, not less. And so the painting that I did after Let Go is called The Release. And it's the same model, it's the same woman, except she's now let go of the balloon and her hands are in this position because they point upward and outward. Because I found that as I look to God every day and I look towards others, like look towards serving other people, that's when I like found healing from my black balloon. So we don't need to go through the whole book, but yes, was painting cathartic? 100%. And it's so amazing because it allows you to take all these things that you feel and offer them to other people as well. And so it's like that idea of connection and then something to pour yourself into, and so grateful all the time that God has given me this gift to deal with grief. But I feel like there's endless gifts that will help us deal with grief, not just painting.
I love that. Now I know what I can get my wife for Christmas. That's perfect. It's so helpful for me. No, thank you. That was beautiful, and I love the story, right, with that you just kind of took us through as well. That story of grief and of letting go. And when you were talking about the balloon, I was thinking about my little kids when they're running around the house with the balloon, and how it is fun for maybe a little while and they love it, but then sometimes it becomes a burden, right? Because they're like, oh, if I let this go, it's gone. And Dad, will you hold it for me? Anyways, I just was
That's
loving
right.
what I was learning there. And
Oh, I
we
love that
can,
perspective.
the Savior he can hold it, and it's going to be okay. And so love that. Thank you, Jenedy.
Sure.
Well, we'll be sure to link out to Coming Full Circle and The Great Divorce in our episode notes. And I think that will be two great resources for people who listen along with this wonderful episode. You've shared such great ideas with emotion and feeling. And thank you so much, Jenedy, for being willing to come on, and maybe we can navigate towards the last question that we like to ask all of our guests. So considering your experience with grief, what do you now believe about Jesus Christ?
Yeah, I love this question. And like one thing you kind of talked about earlier was that this idea of knowing, and how until you've been through grief, when you approach somebody that's been through a loss, all you can say is, I'm so sorry. But you have there's nothing to back it up, right? There's nothing of substance to put behind it until you have experienced that thing yourself, right? And for me, like, I always knew that Jesus Christ was a miracle worker, and I always knew that he was like the healer of our souls. But until you have been absolutely demolished as a soul, you don't know what he's actually capable of. And so for me, I mean, I talked about how my relationship with Jesus Christ and with him, with God, was based on this idea of like an experiment, and then I've got evidence. Well, for me, like, this grief journey became a really big experiment, because I remember writing in my journal, okay, like, you say that you're the healer of our souls. You say that you're the balm of Gilead. But this is like the Grand Canyon. And I honestly don't know if you can bring it back together. I don't. I really don't. I'm willing to experiment. I'm willing to try. And I actually had some very many people tell me after my son passed away, Jenedy, you know what? You're never actually going to be really whole until you're with your son again. I'd be like, thank you. And I
Such a
found out
hopeful
that
thought, yeah.
that is actually a lie. That's not true. Because I had this opportunity to experiment upon the word and see, is he really who he says he is? Well, here I am, 14 years down the road, and I can tell you, he can bring the Grand Canyon together. He actually is who he says he is. He actually is a miracle worker. And I used to think that this idea of victory over death was like only something that would happen in the future, in the resurrection, you know. But I've actually learned that he grants us victory over death to those that are left here in death's wake. That we are granted power over death through the atonement of Jesus Christ. And I think about how much I wanted this great miracle to happen while my son was in the hospital. But instead, I got the miracle of me. I got the miracle that he healed me. And I don't know which is greater, to heal the grieving mother or to heal the broken kid. Maybe the grieving mother, you know? And so I feel like my relationship with him is on a whole other level. because of the things that we have been through together, because we've been to hell and back together. And the other thing that's super amazing is that, you think that the healing of Jesus Christ means that just, what was broken is going to come back together. But the truth is that is the baseline. If you continue to go to him, he will build from there. He might make you a ninja. He might give you a platform to share your art and your story with millions of people. And that is amazing, right? And so I want all, any grieving parents out there, anybody who's going through loss, to know that I have a knowledge that Jesus Christ is who he says he is, that he's the healer of our souls. If he can heal me, I'm pretty sure he can heal you. And if you keep going to him, he will build upon that, not only the healing, but take you to like the 2.0 version of yourself.
Love that. I love that. What he is filling, and I was thinking while you were saying that, that we may feel empty, right? When we've lost a loved one, we feel empty and we feel this hole and we feel like part of us is missing. And I love your testimony that he fills us. And what ultimately is going to be empty, or already is empty, is the tomb. That's what's empty. And because that's empty, we know that eventually, that back to that time, the time chains, right? Eventually, so will every grave. And that's what's ultimately going to be empty, because he's going to fill us. And I feel filled today from what you've shared with us, Jenedy. Thank you so much for filling our souls with the light you've brought.
Yeah, of course.
Well, thank you everybody for listening to another episode of the Grief and Belief podcast. And thank you, Jenedy, for your time and for your message. And we hope that everyone will share this with somebody who you feel will really stand in need of hearing a message of hope like the one Jenedy has shared with us today. Thank you.
Thank you to our incredible guests for sharing their story of hope. If you know someone who might be blessed by hearing this message, please share it with them. We would love it if you would subscribe, rate, and review, and comment on our podcast so others can find it. Be sure to follow us on Instagram and Facebook, as well as join our Grief and Belief Facebook group. Thank you to our sponsor, High Five Live Tours, where fun and joy meet on inspiring travel experiences. Special thanks to our producer, Misty Lynn Howard. Check out her history podcast called Faith Ignited. Thank you again for listening, and we'll see you next time.